All right. Hey everyone, welcome to the PA School Application Deep Dive. We're going to get started here in just a couple moments. Go ahead and grab that QR code on the screen and sign in. That'll be great. It's going to ask you for some additional identifying information. If you could share that, that would help us better understand who is attending on our workshops and how we can better support different populations of students on campus. So we'll give you a minute or so to sign in. All right, and for folks that just joined the room, please grab that QR code on the screen and sign in. We'll get started here in just a couple moments. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Sonia Gordillo. I use she, her, aya pronouns, and I am one of the pre-health advisors here in Tykeson College and Career Advising. I'll let Amanda introduce herself.
Oops, sorry. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Amanda. One of my windows was in the way, so I couldn't see everyone. I'm one of the other pre-health advisors, she, her pronouns as well. Excited to see you all today.
Yeah, thank you all for being here today. Today, we are going to do a deep dive of the CASPA application portal for PA School. That's the centralized application portal, also known as a primary app, that you're going to use to apply to multiple PA programs at the same time. We'll start off by doing an overview of the application timeline, and then we'll finish off by talking about the cost of the application, financial support that you can access, resources, and next steps. All right, and feel free to use the chat as we are going through the slides. If there is any questions that you have about any of the information, add them to the chat. If there's any bigger questions, we'll probably save those for the Q&A time that we have at the end of the presentation. And any questions that we don't answer in today's presentation, we'll have an opportunity to continue the conversation through our campus site hereafter. Okay. All right, so the CASPA application timeline. So first and foremost, the CASPA application opens in April. Typically, it opens in that last week of April. So for the 2024-2025 application that's about to come up, they haven't officially announced that specific date in which the application will open. They should announce that sometime between mid-March, but we can expect that it's going to be that last week of April, as it has all the previous years. Application deadlines, that happens anytime between July through April. They're individual deadlines by programs, but just because there are individual deadlines doesn't mean that you should be applying by the deadline. I would encourage you to apply as early as possible. So sometime between like April, May, or June, that would be an ideal time to submit your primary application, because many of these programs are rolling admissions. And so you want to make sure that you are at the top of the line for those spots in those programs. So the sooner that you apply, the better it is for you. Some programs may not be rolling admissions. So if you wanted to take the additional step of looking into the admissions process for those programs to make sure whether or not it's okay to apply by the deadline, you could do that. I like to encourage all students to assume that it is rolling admissions and apply as early as possible. All right, so interview season happen as early as June and run through the following year into like January, February-ish. And then admissions decisions can happen as early as August and then run through the following year into when the actual application, when the orientation for the program is. So if you're waitlisted for a program, you could be waiting to hear back from that program all the way up until the orientation of them. So there are 4 different types of admissions decisions. There's admitted, denied, waitlisted, and hold. Hold means that they essentially want to interview other candidates before they make a decision on you. And then from there, they'll decide whether or not you're any one of the other 3 categories. Waitlisted, they'll typically tell you your position on the wait list. So that can be really helpful in terms of determining whether or not you want to wait to be transitioned off of that wait list, if you get like another admissions letter, or kind of like developing a plan as to whether or not you want to do another gap year or reapply if you're exploring that option as well. All right, and then program start dates. This can be a little bit confusing. So every program has their own start date. Fall is the most common one that we hear, where it starts in August, typically for those semester-based schools. But there are some summer and spring starts. So spring start means that the program's going to start in January. So again, these are typically semester-based schools, and so a spring start would equal a January start. So be careful with that. Summer start, that would typically be like late May, early June. All right, and so if you're trying to apply as early as possible, there are some things that you need to be working on your application even before that April opening date. And so here are some of those things that, that you should be thinking about. So that includes requesting letters of recommendation. So thinking about your plan for making those requests and doing that early so that you can give your letter writers plenty of time to write that letter of recommendation. And then thinking about those standardized exams. So you may not have to take any standardized exams depending on the programs that you're applying to, but it is possible that you would need to take the GRE or the PA-CAT, that's a little bit new, or the CASPA exam. And so we do have some slides on those 3 different exams that we'll go over with you. And then lastly, you want to be thinking about those essays that you're going to be writing for your application. So that includes drafting your personal statement early so that you can get some feedback, thinking about that resume/CV that you're going to need to submit for many of these programs. So working on that and getting that finalized. And then in addition to that, when the CASPA application opens, you'll want to grab those supplemental essays. So that essentially means that you'll go into your application, you're going to mark the schools you're interested in applying to, and then that's going to populate into your CASPA portal. From there, you can click on the program, and then you'll be able to see any sorts of additional questions that the program wants you to fill out. And so those are supplemental essay questions. So you'll want to grab those and organize them into a nice Word doc so you can start working on those as well. All right, so here's the timeline for applying to PA school in the 2-year, like junior, senior year timeline. So this I like to call a no gap year plan. So really you would be starting that application early in your junior year, thinking about those letters of recommendation requests, standardized exams, and those essays. And then come April, May, be working on that primary application and then submitting it as early as possible. Thereafter, you may get secondaries from schools. That essentially means that they're going to email you, say, hey, we have additional information for you to fill out. It could be a questionnaire, it could be essays. It's not common for programs to do that, but it is possible. So keep your eyes out for any sorts of email communication that you get from programs. And then once you submit that, then you're in the waiting game for interviews. Not all programs require that, so you just be in the waiting game for interviews as soon as you submit that primary application. So as you can see, it's a kind of like a 2-year process to be applying to PA school. I would say it's pretty common for folks to be doing a true gap year. So that means taking some time after you graduate from U of O to be gaining some direct patient care hours in preparation for that application. All right, any questions about that timeline? Awesome. All right, and as I just mentioned, you need direct patient care hours to apply to PA school. So typically programs require anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 direct patient care hours. And so here we have some example of things that count as direct patient care hours. This is not an extensive list. If you want to take a look at other possibilities, it could be helpful to take a look at program websites and see what they count as direct patient care hours. OHSU has a really nice outline of what they count as direct patient care and what they count as healthcare related. And every program will have their own list on their website. Some programs allow healthcare related hours to count towards those direct patient care hours. So for example, OHSU PA school, they allow 1,000 of their 2,000 direct patient care hours required to count as healthcare related. So in their books, scribe counts as healthcare related. So if you work as a scribe, you can have 1,000 hours of that count towards those 2,000 hours. And then the other 1,000 hours would need to be direct patient care where you're providing direct support to patients and you have like some sort of level of responsibility about their health and well-being. Okay. And then in addition to that, some programs may allow all of your hours to come from Scribe. And so if you wanted to be strategic, you could be applying to programs that only accept all of your Scribe hours to come from Scribes. And you can have a successful application doing that too. And then there are a few programs that don't require any patient care hours. Typically, these programs are typically only looking at your academics and therefore have a very competitive GPA for matriculation. And so there are some pretty great programs out there that don't require any patient care hours. You could be looking at that as well, but they're going to be pretty academically competitive. So all in all, it's important to look at the admissions requirements because it is kind of all over the place in terms of their direct patient care hours and what they can and cannot count towards it. So please take a look at their websites, read through all of those details, organize yourself in an Excel sheet so that you can keep track of all of those details. On our Canvas site, we have a nice Excel doc that you can download to kind of track all of the different schools that you're looking at, what they require for prerequisites and all of these different variables. So feel free to take a look at that on our Canvas site, download it and start organizing yourself. All right, here are some examples for healthcare related experiences. If you don't have any sort of level of certification to start working in direct patient care, you could be thinking about healthcare related experiences to kind of start working within that area and working towards some of those hours for some of these schools. And so things like working as a scribe, direct support professional, even being a greeter at the U of O Health Center, all of these are really great opportunities to kind of get your feet wet within a healthcare setting. All right, other things that can be of surprise for students that are applying to PA school is shadowing hours. So I know that many of y'all that are working in direct patient care are already working alongside a PA, but just know that some programs do require shadowing hours and you cannot double dip your direct patient care hours with shadowing hours. They have to be two separate things. And so I bring this to your attention now so you can start thinking about who you may want to shadow to get those PA shadowing hours and get that set up so that you're prepared for that part of your application. All right, Amanda, take it away.
Yeah. And so if you really, don't know where to get started with this, one of my favorite things to do is to recommend informational interviews. It's about a 20 or 30-minute conversation with someone. You just email them, tell them who you are, you're a student here at UO, and that you're wondering if they had some time to talk about their career path, right? And you go into this interview and you basically ask them, how did you get here? What do you like about your job? What do you hate about your job? If you could go back and prepare for this career differently, what would you do, right? And you get all this great advice. You get to know a little bit more about the different paths to these occupations because not everyone's path is the same. And also at the end of the interview, you can also ask if they know of anyone else that would be willing to talk to you, or if they know anyone who would be willing to let you shadow, right? So the informational interview is a really great way to kind of get your foot in the door and start to find out more about these, opportunities, right? Another great place to start is the clubs here on campus. I do want to highlight that, of course, students have the most accurate and up-to-date information about all of these extracurricular activities, right? They're the ones doing them, not us, right? We only know what students tell us and they don't tell us everything. So going to these clubs is a great idea because one, you get access to, again, the knowledge that people have sort of gathered before you got there, right? You can also talk to them about their experiences, figure out which kind of opportunity is right for you, right? Volunteering, research, all of these things are really great experiences to have as well. And even if you're working a minimum wage part-time job, that is also great experience. It's all about transferable skills, right? So even if you are a sandwich artist at Subway, think about how dealing with difficult customers is going to help give you the skills to deal with difficult patients, right? So really be thinking about how you're spending your time. A lot of things that you think are maybe just for fun or something that you have to do, not something that you need to do, many of those kinds of experiences also contribute in really meaningful ways to your application. So if you feel stressed out and like maybe you don't have enough on your resume to be qualified for some of these programs, we highly encourage you to make an appointment with us, talk through your experiences, and let's help you identify any of those transferable skills that are actually probably really important to your application. You just don't know yet. All right. So one of the things that you do before you get started on application is definitely do your research on numbers, right? We want to take a look at a couple of different factors in this arena, right? So one, definitely look at the quantitative information. This is all of the information that's real helpful for determining just kind of basically whether or not you should apply to this program, right? So taking a look at the average range GPA, their minimum GRE or PA CAP scores, right? Whether or not they prioritize in-state applicants versus out-of-state applicants, right? And the number of applicants versus the number of people who get interviewed. All of this hard data, right, can really help you make that determination on whether it makes sense for you to apply to this program at all. So, for example, if you don't meet the kind of bottom end of their average GPA range and your GRE score is also not within their minimum, it doesn't make sense to apply there, right? Now, that being said, some of these things are a bit flexible. This is still a holistic admissions process. So I don't want to discourage anyone by saying if you meet average GPA, you can't apply. That's not true. But you do want to think about the ways that your application is kind of working together. So if you're kind of at the low end of their GPA range, but you are well within their sort of average GRE score, go ahead and apply. If you're, sort of missing 2 out of the 4 requirements that this program has, right, and I would say, let's have a conversation about it. It might not make sense, right? Once you've kind of determined whether or not you meet the kind of baseline, requirements and that it makes sense for you to spend the money on this application and to apply to this program, right? Some of the things that you might think about is how is this program structured, right? When do they organize their classes versus their clinical experience? Does that make sense with your learning style? What is their class size, right? Again, does that make sense with your learning style? How do they kind of structure mentorship in their program, right? Are you paired up with somebody when you first come in? Is it kind of a free for all? You have to find the faculty on your own, right? Same thing with research opportunities, right? So again, you want to be thinking about some of the same things that you thought about when you were picking a university, right? What are the resources that they can offer me? Does the style and structure of the program suit the way that I learn and the way that I want to live? Is this going to help give me the required skills that I need to become the kind of PA that I want to become, right? So really think about those things. And also ask about their own advising resources, right? Do they have resources to help you get a job once you finish the program? Is there, or are there ways for you to secure, different kinds of residencies and things like that, right? Ask about those things. All right, so tools to help you explore. How do you find out this information, right? Where do you go to find out what programs have all of these things? Well, the PAEA website has a tool that helps you do this, right? So you can literally filter through all of the PA programs in the country according to different, sets of filters, right? And then you can look up the information on all of the requirements, right? So as you can see, it lists like, okay, OHSU has these kinds of requirements. Now, while using this, I do highly recommend that you double check against the individual program's website because sometimes the program will update stuff on their website and not remember to update their profile in the PAEA School Explorer tool, right? So if you're really interested in that program, take a quick look to verify, make sure that you're going through their individual website to see that all of the information is correct. All right. And then when you're ready, you're going to open up your CASPA portal, right? So CASPA is the Common Application Portal for PA programs, and it looks a little bit like this. It's really kind of divided into these 4 sections, which again, if you remember your college applications, right, it's all pretty much the same thing. You've got your personal biographical information, you've got your academic history, you've got, any supporting information. So this is where things like your personal statements and stuff, right? Program materials, any other, the direct patient care hours proof, right? All of those materials are all going to go in these sections. And just so you know, common application portals always have their own set of rules. And the work, kind of slightly differently from each other, right? So if you ever run into problems, please make sure to check out the applicant help center. One, it is worth it to take a quick read of the quick start guide at the very beginning, so that you're kind of familiar with all of the pieces of the portal, and literally like what buttons to push and which ones to not click on, right? All of that kind of stuff. They also have really great customer service representatives. So if you do run into problems, you can always contact the help center for support. And they're here to, again, help you sort out all of these issues with your application. And of course, sometimes they're going to know way more than like we are going to know, right? Because of course, we are not, super experts in every single portal, right? So we highly recommend that if you are having a technical issue or something like that, contact the help center, right? Reach out to their customer service first. All right, so as I said, what's on the application, right? It's divided up into these 4 sections. So the personal information is going to have all of these details, right? Again, pretty basic. Your name, your address, race, and ethnicity, right? It will also have an environmental factors essay, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and the release statement, which we'll talk about in a second here. In the academic history section, of course, every single school you've ever attended pretty much for your life, right? Your high school, all of the colleges, right? You're also going to have to enter in your transcript. So it's very similar to a job application where you send in your resume, but you also have to type out your resume on the next like 3 pages of the application. Same thing here. You're going to send in your transcript, an official transcript, but you still have to do the work and type out all of the classes as in the order that you took them that match your transcript. It's annoying, I know, I'm sorry, but it's a pretty common feature of like literally every form you're ever going to fill out for the rest of your life. RIP. And then this is also where your standardized tests are going to go. Usually you're going to have your score sent directly from the test service to the program. So there shouldn't really be too much to do here. Usually it'll just have a screen that'll tell you whether or not your scores have been received or not. Okay. So the next section, the supporting material. This is your letters of evaluation. This is where you describe your experiences and achievements, list any licenses and certifications, right? Your personal statement, if you're a member of any organizations. And then the last section, the program material, is all of the material that's specific to each program, right? So all of the programs you're applying to, if those programs have supplemental essays, those sections will populate at that time and you'll see them, or they might send them to you at a later date. So just double check individual according to each program. And there's also going to be a prerequisite verification section per program. So there's going to be a little thing where, again, you have to do that thing where you have to tell them all of the classes that you took, how it matches up with the prerequisites for their program, just to verify that, yeah, you've done all of the things that they want you to do before you apply. All right, Mary is saying there is some problem with the audio. Are there parts that you want me to repeat because they didn't hear me so well?
Sorry, can you say that again, Amanda?
Mary said that my audio was cutting out. Were there parts of the presentation that people wanted me to repeat?
The webinar is also being recorded, so we'll take a look at the recording as well. And if it needs to be re-recorded, we'll take the time to do that so you have access to all of this information, okay?
Mm-hmm. And of course, feel free to keep asking these questions. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so next part, right? So the advisor release that I was just talking about, this is a form that's going to pop up during your application that basically just, releases your application information to us advisors, right? So this just allows us to see things like the number of schools that you've applied to, the status of your application at those schools, right? So whether you've been accepted, waitlisted, whatever, right? All of that kind of information. And it's just really helpful for us to kind of track and be able to know, like, how effective we are, right? Are we really helping our students get into these programs? That's all really good data for us to have. So if you could select yes, please do. Okay, environmental factors. Let's see. I think this is Sonia. Go ahead.
It is me. All right, so we're going to take a little bit of time to dive into a couple of those different subsections a little bit more. So one of those is the environmental factors section. And so here they're going to ask you for a description of your childhood residency. It's 250 characters, not words. So it's a very, very quick 1 to 2 sentences to describe your childhood residency. So this can, kind of throw people off a little bit, but basically you just want to provide some details as to your family structure, siblings, parents, their marital status, types of home environment, maybe a little bit about the location of where you grew up in. Some demographic information would be pretty helpful too. So it just has to be a very generic blurb about your childhood residency. They're not going to look too into detail into that stuff, but they just want a general information. Background information section, there is a few things that I want to highlight here. So first and foremost, I want to highlight that academic infraction section. So this is for folks that have had any sort of academic probation on their transcript. It does not include academic warning. It also does not include any sort of department or college or scholarship, probationary status that you might have been in. It only includes probation for not meeting the university standard of a 2.0 or better cumulative GPA. And so, if you were part of that, if you received any sort of email communication from the university saying, hey, you fell below a 2.0 cumulative, please connect with an academic advisor to talk about this a little bit more. Typically, there's an official stamp on your transcript that happens with that. If you have any concerns about it, please schedule an appointment with us and we can talk through. But if you mark yes to this, it also gives you some additional character space to talk about that. So you'll have an opportunity to talk about any sorts of challenges that you experienced during those terms in which you were on academic probation and talk about any adversity that you overcame. Okay. The PAEA pipeline question, this essentially asks if there is a specific area in PA that you're interested in working in. So things such as emergency medicine or pediatrics or surgery. So you can indicate which area you would like to work in after you graduate from PA school. So this response is not visible to programs, so that's pretty important to know. It's only for PAEA to use for recruitment purposes. So if you mark a certain area, they might send you some email communication about certain programs or just some general information about that field. All right. The background information section. Essentially, you have to check the box if you would identify yourself within the statement presented. So some examples include, I'm a first generation in my family to attend college, or I am from a family that lives in an area that is designed as or designated as a health professional shortage area or medically underserved. So if you identify as any one of those that are listed, you'll want to mark that. They'll ask some other information about where you graduated high school from and what their graduation rates are. I know that can be kind of hard to gather that information, but just do some general Google searches and see if you can gather some stuff and try to answer those questions to the best of your ability. And then lastly, there is a COVID essay. So on top of your personal statement and supplemental essays, you also got to think about this COVID essay. So this is 200 2,500 characters, not words, that you would be writing about any sorts of like academic, professional, and personal experiences that you've had during COVID that may have impacted your experience to get into PA school. So some things that you might want to consider talking about. So for example, it's like if you had any academic challenges as you transition to online courses, and that's evident through your transcript. This is an opportunity for you to talk about that. If your grades improve during that period of time, it's a good opportunity to also highlight your strengths and adaptability as well, and how that's connected to your readiness to pursue PA school. Another example is like how we were all in an online world during that COVID period, and that may have impacted your ability to establish a strong relationship with faculty, which ultimately impacted your ability to feel like you could have gotten a strong letter of recommendation from someone during that period of time. So that's a good opportunity for you to advocate for yourself. Okay, so think about all of these different categories and ways in which you might have been impacted. Highlight those challenges, also highlight some sort of skill or thing that came out of that experience that you want to put to the front of your essay so that you can highlight that though I experienced this was a challenge, I overcame it because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And for those reasons, I'm ready to pursue PA school. All right, so transitioning to talk about your academic history section. So as Amanda mentioned, you have to request an official transcript from all of the colleges and universities you have college credit at. So of course, that's going to include the University of Oregon, but if you have any college now credit from a community college near home, you'll need to request an official transcript from them, okay? If you have any AP credit, you'll need to request an addendum with your U of O transcript. We'll go over how to do that here in the next couple of slides. But a little tip to you is to request an official transcript for yourself, because as Amanda mentioned, you're going to go into your application and you're going to input all of the courses you've ever taken at U of O in order. And so CASPA, they're going to open up your official transcript and they're going to read that line by line and check your academic history section to make sure you inputted everything correctly. Okay, so it would be helpful for you to request an official transcript for yourself so you can do it exactly how they see it. Okay. Lastly, you're going to list a major and minor. And when you do that, it's going to give you a list of different options. They're not specific to U of O, so you'll pick one that most closely aligns with your major. If none of them aligns with your current major, then you can always select other major, and that's perfectly fine. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. So request an official transcript. All right, so when you go to request an official transcript in your CASPA portal, you're going to get to this page right here. So you can see on this slide that this individual inputted the University of Oregon because they have credit there, and Lane Community College because he also took some classes there. Okay, you're going to click on order. And then when you do that, it's going to pop up this page right here. So under step 3, you're going to want to copy and paste that transcript ID that you can see listed there. And then in your DuckWeb, you're going to log into your DuckWeb and follow the steps to request an official transcript. And you'll put in that transcript ID in there. Okay. So here you can see this is the DuckWeb side of things. So from University of Oregon to AMCAS. So this will change its name. You're going to put CASPA because you're wanting to send it to CASPA. And then you'll put send now. The other options is send once final grades are in. And then you'll put that transcript ID as I just mentioned. And then right here, it's going to say CASPA ID. So you'll also want to input that, and you'll find that on that top right-hand corner of your CASPA portal. So you can see kind of right here next to sign out, you can see that CAS ID. So that's where you're going to find that. Okay. So AP, IB, CLEP credit. If you have any AP, IB, CLEP credit, this is really important. So you'll want to request an addendum with your official transcript request. So to do that, you're going to open up a Word doc. you're going to put in that Word doc, I would like to request an addendum with my official transcript for my AP credit or for my IB credit, etc. And then you'll attach that to your transcript request. That's going to let the registrar's office know that they need to input your AP credit in your transcript. Okay, they do that manually. So otherwise, if you do not do that, it's just going to show up as like bulk AP credit on the top of your official transcript. They're not going to see exactly what credit you have. So this is especially important if you have AP credit for any prerequisite. So AP biology, calculus, etc. All of that, super important that you request an addendum. You can't request one for yourself, unfortunately, but to know what the addendum looks like, you can do that through your DuckWeb under Transfer Evaluation Report on that right-hand side. That's exactly what it looks like. Okay. All right, so as I mentioned, you're going to go in and input every single course you've ever taken in order. So here is what that part of the application looks like. So you can see here, this person has AP credit. They have Psych 201 and Bio 211 listed there. And then it has 4 credits for each of those courses. And then CR, you'll want to input CR for grade if you have AP credit. And then all of these other courses are from their first term fall term. So it's listed under their first term fall term. That is where that would go. Okay. So you would do that for every single term. There is this CASPA course subject list to help you categorize the classes. Most of the time it's pretty you can kind of guess which subject will fall under that category. But there are some in which it's kind of variable. So an example of that is Psychology 304. So that is biopsychology. You could list it as a psychology course, or you could list it as a biology course. It's really based off of the content of the class rather than the subject of the course. Okay. So think about that as you're inputting those psychology courses and some of those anthropology upper divisions, because some of those are pretty heavy in the sciences that you could probably swap them for a biology course as a subject. And so if you do that, just know that those courses are going to be counted towards your science GPA, which could ultimately help you in your application because they're going to take a look at that BCP GPA, biology, chemistry, physics. In specific. Okay. All right, and I'm also taking a look at the chat, so feel free to jot anything in there if you have any questions. All right, professional transcript entry, you have the option to pay someone to fill this out for you. So for one transcript, it's like about $30-something, and then if it's multiple transcript, there's like a bulk price for that. So you have this option if you'd like. All right, and there's a screenshot of that course subject list that I mentioned. Okay, CASPA prerequisite verification. Once you fill out all of that information, you are going to go into your supporting information or program material section, excuse me. And from there, this is where all of the schools that you're interested in applying to is listed. So you can see here, Central Coast Physician Assistant Program, Eastern Virginia, etc. You'll click on one of those. It'll give you at the top home questions document. So if there's any supplemental questions, that is where that is listed. But under prerequisites, this is where you're going to go in and verify every single course you've ever taken that completes their prerequisites. Okay. There is that. All right.
All right, standardized exams. Okay, so there are a couple of different options for PA programs. Generally, it's usually the GRE if they require a standardized test, but they can also accept the MCAT, and we will also talk about the PA CAT in a few slides. But those are kind of the main standardized tests. So when you take the GRE, you're going to mark the schools that you're going to send them to, right? If the school that you are applying to does require the GRE, it will pop up as part of that, program materials portion where they will ask you, to send in your scores, right? If you haven't, or sorry, just make sure that the scores that you are sending, right, line up with the programs that you want them to be sent to, right? So just keep double checking to make sure that your scores are being sent to the right place here, right? If for some reason you haven't taken the GRE yet at the time that you're submitting the application, it's pretty rare. GRE is like a pretty common exam. They have many dates, pretty much year round. But if that is happening for some reason, you can put in, when you're supposed to take the test. And I believe, let me see, it is your registration code so that when you do complete the test, your score will automatically get sent. Okay. So, how do you prepare for these exams? The GRE is probably the easiest out of all of the standardized exams. It's very, very similar to the SAT in that there are sort of three major areas. It's like reading and writing, and then like a quantitative mathy section, right? But they don't really test for specific subjects like the MCAT does, right? So there's not like a biology section, a statistics section, or anything like that, right? It is a more general exam. The TAEC does have some support for the GRE. There are also plenty of test prep books out there, Kaplan, Princeton Review, all of that kind of stuff. Again, it's not as intense of an exam as something like the MCAT, but it is still, something that you want to study for approximately 6 to 4 weeks before you actually take it. Okay, so there might be a couple of other exams that you might be required to take, but luckily they don't require super, super intense preparation. So you could be required to take the CASPA situational judgment test, which is a test that is supposed to like assess your behavioral tendencies, your leadership qualities. It's a little bit weird, but basically it's got a bunch of like open-ended scenario type questions, where you're going to have a certain amount of time to respond. Sometimes it might be a written response. Sometimes they might ask you to like video your responses. But basically it's kind of like an interview, and it's very, very similar to the med school style interview, multiple mini interviews where again it's like just like a bunch of situation scenario based questions. There's no correct answer. They're just looking for evidence of how you think, right? So they're looking for critical thinking skills. Do you know what kind of questions that you need to ask in order to gather the information that you need to make an action or a decision, right? How is the information that you're getting factoring into the decision that you're making or the action that you're taking? Really more for those kinds of qualities. um, if the CASPA is wired, definitely, reach out to us. We can use the interview prep appointment service to do that because, as we said, it is very, very similar to prepping for like an MMI interview. Okay, and so here is some information about PA CAT. So this is a new test. Most PA programs do not require the exam. There has been talk about having this be a common requirement across all the schools, but so far they have not made it standardized. So please be sure to check those admissions requirements to see if they require or recommend the exam. Um, Again, don't check against the individual website. So the PA CAT is similar to the MCAT in that it has specific subject areas. So it has 9 subject areas, and they are anatomy, behavioral sciences. So you're thinking, psychology, sociology, biochemistry, general biology, general and organic chemistry, genetics, microbiology, physiology, and statistics. So already you can kind of see why it's not required across all schools because, of course, not all schools require both genetics and microbiology. Not all schools require biochemistry, right? So there are some irregularities there. So again, make sure to take a look to see if your specific school requires it. If not, don't waste your money, right? If they do, then you're going to want to look more into it, right? It's a 240 question multiple choice test. It lasts about 4.5 hours. It is electronically administered, and you can only retake it 3 times in a year. So again, it's similar to the MCAT in that way, in that it's a very sort of high pressure test. You want to take it close to when you're applying, and you really want to aim to only take it 1 time and get a really good score. There's free tests prep for the company that made the exam. Exam Master. We're going to put that information up on our Prepared for Monday programs page. We'll be sure to update that. So there's that at least. You will still have to pay for the test itself, but the exam prep is free. So that can be very helpful. But again, I would definitely recommend that you take the time to do the research and see if those programs require it. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on to the supporting information section. There's a section that has most of like the major essays in it, right? For example, the personal statement. So a personal statement is going to be about 5,000 characters. Remember that it is characters and not word count. So it also counts punctuation and spaces, right? So 5,000 characters. The question though is pretty simple. Why are you interested in becoming a PA? Right? So through this essay, you want to make sure that you're giving examples that demonstrate that you know what the profession is about, that you're committed to it, and that you have the skills required for it. So you do want to talk a little bit about, how your coursework and your experiences have prepared you for this occupation. But again, you also want to talk about why you want to be in this occupation and what is your kind of like healthcare philosophy, right? Like what kind of PA are you trying to be? Who do you want to help? Why do you want to help them? What are the kinds of issues in healthcare that you are aiming to kind of tackle as a PA, right? Some of those more, larger philosophical questions are also at play here. We're going to have a personal workshop soon. I believe it is going to be Valentine's Day week. Whatever that Monday is. I think it's something, I think it's the 15th, if I remember correctly, for a personal statement. There's a slide at the end of the conference, so we'll take a look at that. All right, so this is pretty important to think about your personal statement because there's also the experiences section, right? So in this section, this is going to be where you list all of your experiences from the past 10 years. And it could be, a little bit longer than 10 years if it's super relevant. But what are all the experiences that are kind of contributing to your PA journey, right? Don't miss out on opportunities to talk about things, right? You really want to list everything. You also want to mark yes to releasing authorization, which allows programs to contact your managers, employers, supervisors, and things like that. They don't often do that, but if they want that information, we want to confirm. So just make sure to mark yes. And generally, if they are doing that, they'll kind of let you know so that you can let your employer know. Otherwise, your employer is going to be like, why am I getting a spam call, right? So they'll generally tell you. Okay, so across your kind of work and activity section, right? There are 9 different experiences. You can list an unlimited amount of experiences, but you cannot list projected experience. And there's a separate section for achievements for honors and awards. So what goes into this particular section? We've got a list of the experience types here. And again, I want to encourage you to list everything. If you did babysitting, if you took care of a relative, all of that stuff can count. Where it counts might be a little complicated, in which case I would say come in, right? Make an appointment with us and we can talk about how to categorize your experiences. And we also want to be thinking about which experiences are going to be the ones that you choose to really go into more detail in like your personal statement or your interview, right? We don't want to be reusing the same details across all of these sections of your application, right? So it is good to make an appointment to talk to us so we can kind of sort through your stories and think about like, okay, we're going to use this story for your personal statement. So when you describe this experience, keep it super brief, right? You don't have to repeat the stuff because we already talked about it in your personal statement. Or we're going to talk about this in the interview. So again, keep the description kind of brief and we'll go into details when you do the interview, right? So we do want to be making those kinds of decisions as far as the content goes here. Okay, so a little bit more about these experiences. You do want to describe how much time spent doing this, the responsibilities during, these activities, any accomplishments or impacts that you made. And most importantly, I think the qualities that you demonstrated that kind of connect to those like PA school core competencies. All right. Um, Again, attend our personal statement workshop. We can discuss strategies for kind of describing these things, um, especially if you're kind of worried about what is the impact that we made or that I made or things like that, right? The personal statement workshop, book an appointment with us to talk about your written materials here.
Yeah, can I also add, Amanda, think
Mhm.
about hobbies that you would want to include in your
Mm,
application. I feel like many times people miss out on the opportunity to include that in their application, but that is a really great way to show the admissions folks a different side of who you are. So, for example, maybe in your downtime, you like building computers and you taught yourself how to build computers. That says a lot about you being a self-initiator. It says a lot about you being able to problem solve difficult, things. So there's really good transferable skills that you can pull out of that hobby. Maybe you're into like winter sports and you want to highlight that. Great, you're a well-rounded individual. You're not, someone that is working 80 hours a week and going to school and that's it. No, you also have some healthy habits in there. Wonderful. Love to see that. Or maybe you want to learn a new language. And you bought yourself like a medical terminology book so that you can learn medical terminology in a new language, or maybe you downloaded Duolingo. Great. Let's add that to your application. That shows so much about who you are. So don't miss out on those opportunities. You can categorize it as extracurricular activities. I think it's a really great way to round out your application.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I would encourage you to not categorize any of your experiences as being like silly, right? If you're the president of like a K-pop fan club, there is a way that we can spin it into a transferable skill. So let's talk about it. Literally nothing is kind of off limits here. All right, so moving on to the next part of the section, the letters of evaluation. So the University of Oregon does not offer committee letters. Not having a committee letter is not going to really impact your application in any way because we don't do them here, right? So you don't have to worry about it. You will have to reach out to individual people to acquire these letters of evaluation or letters of recommendation. Be sure to waive your right to access those letters, right? You can't read them, unfortunately. You're going to need a minimum of 3, but you can have up to 5. You cannot designate specific letters to specific programs. So, for example, if you're working with the PA and they're an alumni for this specific program and you want them to write you a different letter for that program than they're writing to the other programs, can't do it, right? You're going to upload, or your letter writers are going to upload their letters to this portal. They're going to go out to all the programs regardless, okay? So, no individual program letters. You cannot use Interfolio. So it is going to be the kind of system where as you're filling out your application, there's going to be a screen that will ask you who your letter writers are. And you're going to have to put in, their name and their email address. They're going to get an email with a link for them to upload this letter, right? So it's not a different portal. Interfolio is one that people use that can store letters of evaluation. Can't do that here. They've got to be pretty fresh. Generally, programs prefer that you submit one letter from a science faculty person, one letter from a supervisor or an employer, and then one letter from a PA or a physician. You'll have a letter of recommendation overview workshop in a couple of weeks. I think that one's the 13th. So letters of evaluation and personal statement workshop are in the same week. I don't remember which day is which day. We have the flyer at the end of the presentation here, so we'll take a look at that. But that is coming up. Please attend if you would like. Okay, so as we just said, right, this is a section where the materials are going to ask you for the things that are individual to each program. So this is where you're going to get the individual program supplemental essays or questions. This is where you're going to have to individually verify that you've fulfilled the prerequisites for each program that you're applying to. And of course, any other additional documentation, right? So your resume or your CV, if they need proof that you're like an in-state resident or qualify for in-state tuition, you'll put it there. Your licenses and certifications will get uploaded here. If you have any kind of military documents that need to go to the application.
All
All
right.
right. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Sonia.
So the cost of the application. So to submit your CASPA primary application, that's going to be $184 to submit that along with one program. And so if you're applying to more programs, just add an additional $61 for each of those programs. Additional costs that would be very important for you to think about ahead of time. So that includes any sort of secondary fees, if there is secondaries for program applications. So that's somewhere between like $30 to $200, pretty rare that you're going to get as secondaries, but it is possible. Interviews. So some programs are doing in-person interviews. So you got to think about flight, hotel, food costs, and that can be somewhere between $600 to $5,000, depending on how many in-person interviews you have. Many programs are still doing remote interviews. I would say the majority, and then some of them give you the option to choose either or. So there's flexibility there. GRE, that's 205 with a submission score of $35 per program. GRE prep resources, there's some that are no cost, which are great. And then there are some that can be upwards of $1,500. The PCAT, 228. There is a fee assistance program for that you can apply to, and if eligible, that brings it down to $178. So that's nice. CASPA exam, if that's required by any of the programs, you would have to take the CASPA. That's $85, and then the submission score is $15 per program. So roughly, you're looking about like $2,000 to $5,000 to apply. There's also that acceptance deposit if you get admitted into a program, and that is also a variable cost of somewhere between $500 to $1,000. And so I bring this to your attention now. I don't want to scare you, but I just want you to start thinking about your plan for paying for the application. And so there is some financial assistance. There's a CASPA fee assistance program. So when you log into the CASPA portal, on that top right-hand corner where there's that sign out button, there's a drop-down option to apply to the fee assistance program. So they'll take a look at your family size and income to determine your eligibility. If you're eligible, that covers the cost of $245 total. So that's the primary application plus 2 free programs. All right. And for freshmen, sophomore, juniors in the room, we have the pre-health scholarships that are still open. The one that I would encourage you all to take a look at, it's that family and health related one. So the Margaret J. Wise Scholarship. That is a good opportunity for you to save some undergrad tuition money. And then hopefully have some money that you can start saving for graduate school applications. So applications due April 1st. Take a look at the scholarship dashboard through U of O. Fill out that general student information. There's a section in there that's going to ask you if you're interested in a health career. Mark yes, and then that should populate this scholarship for you. And then it'll also populate all of the other scholarships you're eligible for through the College of Arts and Sciences. And so many of those are going to be due here soon, so I would encourage you to take a look at it. All right, verification process. So once you submit your application, so that means you have paid the fee for the application or have the fee waiver in there, your application will be marked as complete. Once all of your official transcripts have been received and processed by CASPA, and at least 3 letters of evaluations are in the system. It will also be marked complete once your academic history section has been verified or that PTE professional transcript entry was approved. Okay. Application is verified once all of those details are shown as complete. it is possible for your application to be undelivered or returned, essentially. This usually happens if you inputted your academic history incorrectly. So maybe you missed a course on that official transcript and forgot to put that in there. Maybe you put in an incorrect grade, or maybe you repeated a course, but you only put that repeat grade and not the original one. You got to do both. Okay. So be careful with those small details because that could cause your application to be returned, and then you have to resubmit it once it's corrected. So that could cause delays. It takes about 1 to 4 weeks for your application to be verified. From folks that I've worked with on their PA school application, I've heard good things that it doesn't take too long. I know for vet school, it can take like upwards of 6 weeks, but for PA, it's been a pretty quick turnaround. I still would recommend, like, if you are submitting by the deadline, submit earlier than the deadline. So it gives CASPA some time for your application to be verified. If it gets returned, you have some buffer time in there for you to go back through, fix any issues, and then resubmit. Okay. So give yourself about 3 weeks ahead of those application deadlines, at the very least, would be my recommendation. All right, so once you submit your application, there are parts of your application that you cannot make edits to. So that's typically all of those essays and any supplemental essays that you've already submitted for programs. So that's why it's important to start working on those before before you submit, because there won't be any opportunities to make any changes. There are parts of your application that you can change, such as like your contact information. You can add new evaluations. You can edit some program materials. All of those details are located in the Help Center if you want to check out those additional nuances. But it's super important that you start working on those essays early so you can get feedback from your support team, whether that be us, Amanda and I, or other folks in your circle. All right, so all in all, so pre-work would be thinking about who you want to request a letter of recommendation from. And then start making those requests, especially if you're going to be applying in this 2024-2025 cycle. Making those requests pretty soon would be really important, so you give them plenty of time. Prepare and complete any sort of standardized exams. So developing a plan around that, working on those essays, personal statement, COVID, those experiences descriptions, making sure you're highlighting those wonderful transferable skills that you have. And then finalizing that program list. So doing a little bit of research on some programs, maybe attending some info sessions or open houses, all of that's going to be really good for you. In April, there's going to be some key things that I'll want you to do kind of immediately when that application opens. So that is requesting those official transcripts to be sent to CASPA, ideally requesting transcripts to be sent to yourself, inputting those letter of evaluation requests into the portal so that your letter writers can receive that email and then upload it when they're ready, and then start organizing those supplemental essays. Okay. Once you submit that primary application, you're going to quickly turn around to start thinking about interviews. So you can schedule mock interviews with us. You can be doing some research on the different formats of mock interviews for interviews. So it's just know about the different styles and doing some prepping around that. Be sure to check your email, even that spam folder. You don't want to lose out on an opportunity for you to submit any sort of secondaries or be invited in for an interview. So check those additional folders in your email. All right, so next steps. So we have our new pre-health advising Canvas site. I hope you've taken some time to take a look at all of the wonderful resources that Amanda has organized for you in that Canvas site. So a next step is that we are going to create a group discussion for folks that are going to be applying in the 2024-2025 cycle. And that is our opportunity to kind of build some community for you all so that you can get some questions answered. Maybe somebody, maybe you have a question that somebody else has already navigated and y'all can kind of help each other. Maybe you want to get together and practice a mock interview with somebody that's also applying the same cycle. So we just want to build some community and camaraderie with you all. So be on the lookouts for that. And then also consider attending our letters of recommendation and personal statement workshop. So Amanda, you were right. Letters of rec workshop is on Tuesday next week, and the personal statement is going to be at Thursday next week. So be sure to come to those as well. And then we'll open that up for any questions. Here's our email. Feel free to email us at our general email, freehealthadvising@UOregon. Or you can email Amanda and I directly if you'd like. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen and feel free to unmute yourself or ask any questions in the chat.
Generally, we like to put up the recordings of these workshops about a week after we have the event. So if you want to re-watch this presentation, or if there were parts of it, maybe you came a little bit late and you missed some chunks, we will be posting the recording up on the Canvas. If you don't have access yet, you can feel free to request it. But chances are that you do. Please follow the directions in that short video that in that email that we sent out this morning on how to access the Canvas.
Thanks for being here, y'all.
Hey, if you have a question, I don't know if we can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So sorry about that. Sometimes my headphones are really, really finicky. But I was asking for shadowing opportunities. Is it important that you shadow a physician assistant, or can you have can you have shadowing hours from a physician or from a PT or something like that? Or does it matter more if it's a PA? Basically, that's the question, but
that is a really good question. So I would say that programs that require observation hours typically want observation hours from a PA specifically. Okay. But for programs that don't require any sorts of observation, I would say yes, you can observe anybody within any of those categories. And please input that into your application because it shows that you've taken the time to explore different professions.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
I think generally the rule is keep the majority of hours in the occupation that you want to enter. But if you do a couple of hours observing other people, that's usually fine too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, there's a question in the chat. How many PA schools is typical to apply to?
Tricky question. I would say that, it is a numbers game. The more that you apply, the more chances that you have of somebody saying yes, right? So that is true. But of course, cost is a factor, right? So it's not usually possible for people to apply to every single, school that they want to, just in case, right? I would say in general, I usually see people apply to like 8 to 10 programs. 15 is like a very, very safe number. If you apply to 15, it's like 90% chance you'll get at least one yes, because that's, quite a few applications to put out there, right? So, it's kind of you have to weigh out your risks and your rewards here, right? Does it make sense to say, take this microbiology class if it's only going to get you 2 more applications? Does it make sense to spend the money to apply to this one if your GPA is and your GRE score are not quite what they want? Those decisions are going to have to be made. So usually those things are going to be the ones that are limiting you from the amount of applications that you apply to.
Yep.
All right. Oh yeah, if you're taking a gap year, and you want to use that year to fulfill the patient care requirements, do you need to request letters of rec now, or is there an expiry period for the letters of rec? Great question. I think we would say definitely ask about those letters of rec now, but form that plan with your letter writers, right? They might say, oh yeah, no problem. I know you pretty well. In 6 months, just send me an email, let me know, what you're doing, right? Some professors might be like, oh, I'm going to write it for you right now. I'm going to send you the draft, send it back to me when the time comes for me to like send it in, right? There could be a large variety of ways that faculty members like to handle this. So definitely talk to them now and work out a plan with those individual people.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty common that faculty will want to write the letter closer to when you plan to apply. And so because PA school is one of those professions that it's common for you to do like 2 to 3 gap years before you apply, definitely make those requests by the time you graduate so that you're kind of like on their radar. You get that preliminary yes. And then if they're gonna wait to write it, then every so often send them a nice follow-up email of like, hey, thank you for accepting to write me a letter of recommendation. I just wanted to give you an update as to what I'm doing, kind of detail what kind of work you've been up to, volunteer, etc., so that they can kind of keep you fresh on their mind.
Oh, and another way to kind of entice them to keep in contact with you is that you can always tell them, like, hey, these are the things that I'm doing. If you have students who are interested in doing these things, give them my contact information and I'll let them know how they can get this opportunity, right? So you can pay it back a little bit in that way. And, it's pretty like easy ask on your end, right? Worst case scenario, you have like a 20-minute conversation with a stranger.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions?
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. Appreciate all these follow-up questions. Feel free to email us with anything else that's on your mind or schedule an appointment with us. Thanks so much.
The recording will go up in about a week. The discussion board will probably start around then to give people who, couldn't attend a chance to ask their questions as well. Thanks very much for coming by.
Thank you.
You're welcome.